Hi guys, my name is Shane Cuthbert and I'd like to welcome you back again. This is video number 9. We're really pumping this out. We're really starting to move through these lessons. In this lesson, what I'd like to do is I'd like to point out a few things, but the thing that I'd really like to speak about is cold and dark. Now, that might not make much sense now, but it will make sense towards the end of the video why it's important for us to talk about that at this stage in the lesson. So I'm going to be sharing 2 thoughts with you. The first is that darkness doesn't actually exist. Darkness is just a word that describes an absence of light. So darkness isn't an object, darkness isn't a thing. Okay, so when you say it's dark, that's just because there is an absence of light. Okay, so when you go outside and it's nighttime and it's dark, that's just because there's no lights. The sun's not up. If you're inside, obviously, the lights aren't on. It's just an absence of light. And the importance for, I guess, getting your mind around this at the moment is because we've talked a lot about, perceptions, and you've heard like a common saying about when people talk about a glass being half full or a glass being half empty, having a negative and a positive attitude towards something. When you talk about darkness, it's not necessarily about having a positive or a negative mindset. But what I'm talking about here is the ability to see things as they are. Okay, so we're so used to applying all of these words and expressing things, I guess, in a really exaggerated, over-the-top way. People struggling with issues tend to, they label, those issues as being dark, or they say that they're in a place of darkness. It's pretty metaphorical. And although it is metaphorical, it makes sense. If you are in a place where you cannot see light, you are in the darkness, obviously, as a result. Here's another reason why understanding the difference between, obviously, light and dark, but obviously what darkness actually is. Let's just say you're sitting in a room with a loved one or a family member, okay, and the room's lit up. The lights are on, you're having a conversation, and what happens is the power goes out, okay? You have what's called a blackout. Now, in that moment, your loved one, your family member is still there in that room, okay? They haven't left the room. Just because you are unable to see them does not mean that they're not there. Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is this is really just a way of saying, when we're thinking about our unconscious mind and we're thinking about things that are going on, just because we can't see them doesn't mean that they're not there. And having an awareness and building that awareness and changing our perception, changing our way of thinking, this is really paramount to understand. Okay? Some of the things that we're talking about you cannot see, but that doesn't mean that they're there. Much like when you're in the room and you can't see your family member, it's not that they're not there, it's just that there's no light, okay? You can't see them. Really what we want to do with our thoughts is start shedding light on them, okay? We want to start being able to see our unconscious mind. We want to start to, think about it, acknowledge its existence and understand it a little bit better. And this is going to help us do that. Just by changing our perception just a little bit, it's going to be able to put us in a better position in order to see and acknowledge and accept our unconscious mind. Quite similarly, cold isn't a thing, okay? Cold isn't an object. Cold is really just a word we use to describe an absence of heat, okay? It's, when you're sitting in a home, you're sitting by the fire, and you know things are nice and toasty, but you walk outside, obviously there's no more fireplace, there's no more heat, it's night time, it's the middle of winter, there's just an absence of heat. Okay, you didn't walk outside and experience cold as a thing. Okay, it's not something that hits you, it's just an absence of something. Okay, so it's not that there is a thing, it's that there isn't a thing. Coldness is merely the absence of warmth. Let's say you're sitting, you know, back by the fire, okay? Someone comes and they open the door, okay? They're trying to come into your home. The door opens and you say, hey, close the door quickly, stop. You're letting all the cold air in. They're not actually letting all the cold air in. What they're doing is they're letting the warm air out. What I'd like you to take away from this is the fact that darkness is not real. Darkness is not real, and cold is not real. They are merely just the absence of something. Okay, it's more that something is not there as opposed to that is a thing. Okay, it's merely the absence of something. The reason why this is so important for us to understand is because it explains why when we're feeling alone, or we're feeling scared, we're feeling vulnerable, and we're having these, you know, emotions that are crippling us, I want you to understand that those emotions are not actually a thing. Okay, it's not something that's really affecting us. It's really just an absence of something. So if you're feeling lonely, it's an absence of obviously having someone close by. But that feeling of feeling lonely in itself is not actually a thing. Okay, loneliness does not affect people. It can't affect you. Okay, you can overcome that feeling. That's just the way that your body, with all of its receptors and your neurology, is making you feel, but it's just a feeling. And the feeling is only a direct result of having, you know, an absence of someone nearby. You know, the same thing as feeling, you know, fearful, scared, or unsafe. It's just the absence of safety or security. Okay, it's just the absence of something. It's just something that's missing. These thoughts are going to become a lot more actionable and a lot more. They're going to make a lot more sense later on throughout the series. But while we're building our foundations here, it's important just to touch on these first sort of seeds of thought as we're moving, because it's going to start to make a lot more sense as this stuff becomes a lot more relevant moving on throughout the rest of the series.